Hey everyone, thank you for joining us. Today we have a special guest. We're going to talk about nutrition and supplements. Ladies and gentlemen, Jerry Brainum. Jerry, how you doing?
How are you, Mo?
I'm very good, thank you. We're happy to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much. You know, Jerry, many people say like, okay, I watch your channel. Doug is like 42 years of experience. We watch biomechanics and exercises. And when it comes to nutrition, we go to Jerry Brainum, and now they have him on Smart Training 365.
Yeah.
How long, if you don't mind me asking, how long you been doing this?
Nutrition?
Nutrition, yeah.
Well, if you really want to, it's not going to believe what I'm about to tell you, but my nutrition interest began. I'm glad you're sitting down because a lot of people are going to find this hard to believe. 1962. I
Wow.
was just a kid, and I had a bodybuilding idol named Bill Pearl, who's now 90 years old. He's the oldest living Mr. America. And he wrote something where he suggested reading a nutrition book called Let's Eat Right to Keep Fit. It was written by a woman named Adele Davis. And I read the book and I was just fascinated by nutrition. And I had also been told at the time, I had just begun training. I was just like 12 years old. And I remember somebody had told me that, to attain a great physique, it's a combination of nutrition and bodybuilding. And I knew nothing about nutrition. My nutrition up to the time I began training was atrocious because my mother, unfortunately, and not trying to put her down in any way, she didn't know anything about nutrition. As a child growing up, I had behavioral problems, and I now realize it was because of my diet. I had what is today known as attention deficit disorder, and that can be related to a deficiency of omega-3 fatty acids. I was getting zero, none. I never ate fish, nothing. I had no omega, no sources of alpha linoleic acid, which is the preformed omega-3. To give you an example, my breakfast up until I was up until I started working out was, I mean, I'm embarrassed to say this, a donut and a cup of coffee. That's what I ate for
Wow.
breakfast. And is it any wonder why I had behavioral problems? I mean, when I was a kid in elementary, they wrote me off as emotionally disturbed because it's not that I was stupid. I just it's still and I would throw erasers around. I was always getting in trouble. And now I realize this is, believe it or not, this is entirely because of nutritional deficiencies.
I believe it.
So it can change your life. But once I started, after reading that Adele Davis book, I started studying nutrition, and I've been consistently studying it ever since 1962. If you add up the years, I don't think there's any PhD in the entire planet that can match that. As far as
No.
I'm talking consistently, I've never stopped, and I'm still learning because learning, there's an old saying, learning never ends, which I totally agree with.
So that's like 1962. That's like 60 years
Yeah,
experience. That's amazing. Like to me, experience is powerful, you
right.
know. And for our viewers, like you have 60 years of experience in nutrition. Doug has 40. So that here they are watching 100 years of experience.
That's right. I mean, no, what you're saying is it's a good point to make because there's a lot of educated people around. I mean, there's a lot of people that have PhDs. Some of them have it in nutritional biochemistry. They have dietitians. I'm not saying these people aren't knowledgeable in nutrition, but there are certain things you learn outside the academic sphere that can only come from actual, they call it empirical knowledge, from actual experience, from trial and error. These are things you pick up that you don't learn at school. So again, I'm not saying that I know more than they do, but let's say my scope is much broader than somebody who learned it exclusively through academic channels. Let me put it that way. They're more limited in their scope of knowledge.
100%, I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Doug, for example. I mean, there's a lot of people that study kinesiology, which is muscle movement. But I mean, Doug not only studied it and studied anatomy on his own, but this man was a champion bodybuilder who, through trial and error, began to question. This is a sign of intelligence. A sign of intelligence is when you question the common beliefs and you realize there's something wrong here. Doug began to question the most common exercises like presses for shoulder, things that everybody took for granted, heavy squats for legs. He began to
Deadlift.
realize, when he looked at the anatomical connections, he began to realize there's something wrong here. And not only is it not something wrong, but it also will eventually lead to injuries, inevitably, for everybody, no matter what your genetics. So he came up with the system that you're both involved in, which is basically, I'd call it exactly what you have behind you, smart training. It's smart training. It's working the muscles thoroughly without risk of injury, and working the muscles the way that's in line with their anatomical function. You can't be more straight than that. That's about as straight as you can get.
Absolutely. It's amazing to hear it from you, because many people, now they are getting the best from, in my opinion, I consider you both like icons in this game, in the bodybuilding and nutrition and stuff.
Thank you.
What is a healthy diet?
A healthy diet, well, it depends on which interpretation you look at. If you look at the interpretation of, let's say, medical health professionals, they call a healthy diet a balanced diet, which is eating foods from all the food groups: dairy, fruits, vegetables, meats, and that type of thing. In other words, if you have a certain amount of portions of food from all of these food groups, they call it the food pyramid. That is considered a healthy and balanced diet. Now, I find that kind of humorous, because when I've given nutrition seminars, the very first question I ask is, by a show of hands, this is what I say to the audience: how many people in the room follow a balanced diet? And when I first say it, about half the room will raise their hand. Then I start to go item by item of the food groups. How many people in the room eat a minimal of 5 servings a day of fruits and vegetables, and where 11 servings, a lot of people don't know this, 11 servings is ideal for health, not 5. 5 is the minimal amount. It's not optimal. The optimal is actually 11 servings a day. So I asked that question. Now a couple of hands go down. Now you have about a quarter of the room, right? Then I say, okay, by a show of hands, how many people have dairy products every day? Cheese, milk, for the calcium and the minerals that are, high in those foods. And now maybe 2 hands go up. So in other words, you went from almost the entire room now to 2 hands. So in other words, according to let's say conventional medical wisdom, the ideal diet is to get foods from all your basic food groups. Now, from a macronutrient point of view, they recommend about 55 to 60% carbohydrate, and I think the rest, it's something like 15% protein, and 10 to 15% fat, and that's what's considered the ideal ratio. However, see, there's problems with this, and this is, and I did that in my seminars to point out. See, the topic of my seminars was the truth about food supplements. Mm-hmm. And I started that out because the general assertion among many medical professionals, which I should add, most of the people that write this type of stuff do not have any training in nutrition. They're MDs, they're surgeons, cardiologists. They have no training. I know I'm singing to the choir. Most people realize nutrition is not an essential topic of study in medical school. It is voluntary, and even if it is, it's like something like an hour. They do not have training in nutrition. These are not the people to give out advice about nutrition, right? So the point being that they write articles in the medical journals all the time about how vitamins are a waste of money, they're toxic, you can get all your nutrients from food. The problem being that's only true if you follow a balanced diet, and very few, every time I've given the seminar, it's always been the same results. Turns out almost nobody in the room follows a truly balanced diet. And if you're not following a balanced diet, you are going to lack nutrients. And if you don't get it from supplements, where are you going to get them from? You're not going to get them from the air. And not only that, but there are certain nutrients that you can't even get in sufficient quantity in foods to meet health requirements. To give you 2 quick examples, vitamin D. You'd have to eat something like 2 dozen eggs a day to get a sufficient amount of D, or you have to drink a couple of quarts of vitamin D fortified milk, or, of course, the easiest way is to go in the sun with most of your body exposed and expose it to the ultraviolet rays for a minimal of 15 to 20 minutes. That, what happens is the ultraviolet rays will convert the cholesterol in the skin into a form of vitamin D. You can get as much as 20,000 units a day of D if you do that. However, there's some caveats. The sun has to be in the right spot in the sky. And in the northern latitudes in the winter, it isn't. So you could walk around naked and you're still not going to get any ultraviolet, right?
True.
And the second thing is, if you have darker skin, it's very hard for the ultraviolet. If you're older, it's hard to manufacture vitamin D in the skin. If you're obese, what happens is the vitamin D gets manufactured or synthesized and it's stored in fat. And it goes right into fat stores because vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. So they could be lacking. And then you could say, well, what about the sunny states like Arizona? They did studies in sunny states like Arizona, still had 75% of the people deficient in vitamin D. Even with the sun out and the right, they still weren't, because they weren't out in the sun, because it scares. I mean, on the one hand, you have some doctors saying, oh, don't worry about vitamin D, just go out in the sun, you'll get plenty. Then they have your dermatologists, don't go out in the sun, you'll get melanoma skin cancer. And people are confused. Wait a minute, this guy's saying to go out in the sun for D, this guy's telling me I'm going to get skin cancer. What do I do? I'll tell you what you do. You take a vitamin D supplement. You take 2,000 units a day. Vitamin D pills are so small that, you know, if you dropped it on the floor, you'd have trouble finding it. A baby guinea pig, the tiny little capsules, right? So my point is that you know, again, to answer your question in a shorter way, a good diet would be a balanced diet. If you have a truly balanced diet, I have to admit, you probably don't need that many supplements. I still would suggest certain supplements, vitamin E, vitamin D. And again, depending on which foods you eat, this is the key. The word supplement means supplement. You're supplementing what you're not getting in the diet. So each individual has to look at their diet and be honest with himself and say, okay, what am I lacking here? I don't like milk. I don't like cheese. I need a calcium supplement. I'm a vegetarian, a vegan. I always mispronounce it. Vegan or vegan? I always
Vegan.
Vegan. I'm a vegan, I'm not, I'm into working out, and I'm not getting enough protein. So what do? Okay, you get a vegan protein supplement, pea, hemp, rice, and you're covered. You're covered. It's that easy. In other words, but you wouldn't need it if you ate enough vegetables and fruits. You probably would get enough. But that's a lot of food if you're a bodybuilder or somebody active. You're talking a lot of food, and the problem with that is that one of the great things about vegan diets is that they're loaded with fiber. That's terrific for health. That's great. Unfortunately, it's also very filling. So you're not going to be able to eat enough food. So you take a little 2 tablespoons of a rice protein and you're covered. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? See? So again, you have to assess your diet, look at what you're lacking, and supplement as needed. If you do that, you're going to be healthy. It's that simple.
So there's no one diet like a keto diet or paleo that works, like people choose it. You cannot choose your diet. You have to create your own diet. Is that what you
Well,
mean?
in other words, it depends on your specific goal. On the other hand, for example, when you asked me the question, I thought you were talking about just a generalized year-round diet. If you have a specific goal, like let's say you want to lose weight, now you have to now the diet has to change. In other words, it depends on the individual. 75% of people are what they call insulin insensitive to different degrees. Insulin insensitivity is also called pre-diabetes. It's a precursor. I myself am insulin insensitive, not so much because I'm fat, which is usually a lot of obese people are in it. It's because I have it all over my family. My father died of diabetic complications, both grandfathers. I'm just doomed to have blood glucose problems, but I keep it under control with my diet and exercise. But the point is that, generally speaking, in my experience, after all these years, the majority of people always respond best to reducing carbohydrate intake. And that it depends.
You mean in most cases?
In most cases, yeah. For example, I mean, if you're in a hurry, and let's say for some reason, some people, men and women, they want to lose weight within a certain, let's say, limited amount of time. They're attending a high school reunion or a wedding. They want to look slim. The diet to do there would be a ketogenic diet, which almost eliminates carbohydrates. I don't recommend that year round, but it's the most rapid fat loss diet known to man. I mean, if you could stay on that, it just peels off. There's problems with the ketogenic diet, something called the keto flu. You feel weak, you feel tired. I wrote an article in my Applied Metabolics Newsletter about all the ways to circumvent the keto, the problems, get rid of all the side effects of the ketogenic diet, which I wish I knew that when I competed, because I used the ketogenic diet and I went through a lot of those problems. It was torturous, but it always worked for me, always. So again, the diet depends. Now, on the other hand, let's look at it from the other point of view. Let's say that you're very thin. and your goal is to put some muscle on, put some weight on, now you do a different type of diet. Now you would do the reverse. Now you do concentrate on carbohydrate with good fat, not the junky saturated fat or the trans fat, the good fat like omega fat, that type of thing, a little bit of omega-6, linoleic acid, a lot of protein, and again, let's say about a good amount of, you have to have a good amount of protein, a higher carbohydrate, moderate amount of fat, but you have to have more calories. You know, that, and of course, if you really want to put some muscle on, you have to work out. You have to do some resistant exercise. So again, you have to assess your particular goals. What are you looking to do? And that would determine the diet. But to answer your question, my personal opinion, based on the medical science I've seen, if somebody said, well, what is the best diet that kind of combines everything, that'll make you look, that'll make you lean, that'll keep your muscle, that'll, let's say, delay the aging process and provide most of the nutrients, I would answer that by saying using what's called the Mediterranean diet, which is basically small amounts of meats and chicken, concentration on fruits and vegetables, and you know, nuts and that type of thing. But it's a fairly large variety of food. Of course, it also emphasizes things like extra virgin olive oil, which is very, very healthy. That, you know, if you want to stay on a diet all year round and stay nice and lean and stay very healthy, and actually that type of diet will lower systemic inflammation, prevent a lot of degenerative diseases that are associated with aging, that would be the best way to go. That particular, yeah.
Perfect. So that means for muscle gain, it's like higher carbs.
Right.
For fat loss, it's like a ketogenic diet. And for just maintaining a healthy Mediterranean diet will be
Right.
really good.
Well, the weight loss, you could start with a ketogenic diet because that kick starts it. In other words, as the critics of low carbohydrate diets are often prone to talk about, the first, you lose weight fast. The first week or so is you do lose a lot of water weight because the stored glycogen, each gram of glycogen, which is stored carbohydrate, is stored with almost 3 grams of water, 2.7 to be exact. So as you eliminate carbohydrates, the body's going to burn up its glycogen, and you're going to lose water that's stored with glycogen. So you can lose as much as 10 pounds in 8 days, but it is going to be mostly water. Some of it will be fat. But so what I always tell people is, people don't realize it takes about 5 weeks for a ketogenic diet to kick in fully. People don't give it enough time. It takes 5 to 6 weeks. What I always tell people is, if you can, stay on the ketogenic diet for about 5 to 6 weeks. After the first or second week, you'll be burning fat like crazy, especially if you exercise. Then gradually add carbs back in. So now you're not on a ketogenic, you're on a low carbohydrate diet. But the good part about that is, as you add carbs, you can add good, healthy foods back in, fruits and vegetables, which you need for health, because they contain nutrients you can't find in supplements, like polyphenols, flavonoids, flavols. These things are only available in the natural state. So when you have the low carbs, you can add these foods back in. So you can get the best of both worlds. You're still on a low carbohydrate diet, but you're getting a certain amount of, let's say, healthy balancing foods, alkaline foods that will keep you healthy. So under that circumstance, you could stay on it for months if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Jerry, do you think like if someone was eating healthy in his 20s and 30s, will that same diet considered healthy at 50 or 60?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Maybe certain things have to be changed. Again,
Quantity-wise?
Quantity-wise, yeah, because what happens is a lot of people as they get older, especially if they're not exercising that much, their resting metabolism drops. So that, let's say the same diet that minimized fat accretion when they're in their 20s and 30s, the same amount of calories now could put fat on at, let's say, when they're 60, because they're not as active and they've lost some muscle over the years. That's the key. See, everybody loses muscle no matter what you do. The medical term
At
for
different
it is,
rates.
yeah, different rate, but the medical term for it is sarcopenia, but it's universal. In other words, you could work out to the day you die, but there will be some inevitable muscle loss. I see it on myself all the time. I look at my arms, I'm thinking, why are they so small? I still work them hard, but that's just the way it is. You know, it's many, many reasons for it. It's way too complex to go into now.
Right.
But the point is, the loss of muscle is problematic because muscle contributes to what they call the resting metabolic rate. that and the thyroid metabolism. That's what controls your resting metabolism. And not so much the thyroid, but the loss of muscle as you age means you're burning less calories at rest. So you have to adjust your calories to offset that, let's say, loss of extra calorie burning. If you don't, the calories will accumulate. You'll gradually get, this what they call creeping obesity is the term they use, where it kind of sneaks up on you. These guys that were in great shape when they're 30, suddenly look at they're 50 and they got this roll around their waist. And wait, what's going on? I don't eat that much different. Why am I getting so fat? Well, what's happening is they don't realize it, maybe because of family and responsibilities. Instead of working out every day, now they work out once every 2 weeks, once a month. So they're not burning the calories. And not only that, but they're losing muscle. And the combination of two, there's your fat buildup. See, that's what happens.
There is a test called ancestry DNA. I took that test, and with the same results, you can do a test to see which food works best for you.
Right.
And I did that test based on my DNA, and the report came up with like a certain percentage about fat, carbs, and protein. What do you think of those type of tests?
I'm a little skeptical of that right now, to be honest with you. I think it's a commercialized thing. I don't think it's as precise as they claim it to be. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of those reports, but just generally speaking, I don't think it's possible at this point in time to look at your DNA, let's say, results and determine the exact proportion of nutrients best for you. I think it's speculation at best. That's my answer to the question. In other words, it's overrated. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm sure in many cases, the advice they give you is probably pretty good. Now, there are certain things that'll show up that are very useful to know. For example, some people lack an enzyme that converts a B complex vitamin called folic acid into the active form of the body, which is called methylfolate. In other words, they lack the enzyme. Now, this could show up in a test like that. If you know that, then you have to supplement. Your body is incapable of using folic acid that you get from food or even folic acid supplements. You're going to have to take a special supplement, a methylfolate supplement, and then you'll be okay. That is very useful information, because without that, you have a deficiency in folic acid, which create all kinds of problems, a type of anemia, a type of a brain disorder, all kinds of problems can happen. So that's the kind of stuff that's very useful that can come out of those kind of tests. These are things that you might not know on your own, that there's no way, so.
I was going to ask you, like, how will a person know that? Because it's hard, like, if I have the results, who can help me?
There's only two ways of knowing it. The first way would be an expression of the lack of nutrient. Sooner or later, you're going to show signs, and you're going to go to the doctor and say, well, what's going on? I'm having this or that, and the doctor will do some tests, and it'll probably show up in the tests that you're lacking folic acid. And then he can do further tests and find that you're one of those people that lacks the enzyme. And then the doctor would probably give you the prescribed a methylfolate supplement. But again, you won't know unless you actually tested for it, or if the, let's say, signs of the deficiency manifest themselves. That's the only way you'll know.
Right. And these signs like usually manifest in what?
Yeah, well, it depends on which nutrient. Like I say, folic acid, you would get a type of anemia. It's also, you would get something that affects, especially in older people, where the brain function goes down so bad that and this happens with vitamin B12 deficiency too, where on the surface it can be misinterpreted that you actually have dementia. It's so bad that it looks like you have Alzheimer's disease. It's not. It's a nutritional deficiency. And in the case of B12, a lot of older people have a B12 deficiency, because what's not generally known is that B12, you have to have, it's the most complex of all vitamins. And to be properly absorbed, the stomach has to secrete a protein called intrinsic factor. This kind of locks onto the vitamin B12 that you consume and allows it to be absorbed. Now, the problem with that is that the stomach has to be still producing a certain amount of hydrochloric acid to activate the intrinsic factor, right? As people get older, the stomach actually becomes less functional. They don't secrete enough acid. They don't secrete the intrinsic factor. So any B12 they're consuming passes right through them. It's not absorbed. And they're going to get mental deterioration. In fact, if you look at a MRI of their brain, they have what they call white matter intensity. Their brain actually has shrunk. It actually shrinks from a long-standing B12 deficiency. It's known to cause neurodegeneration of the nerves in the spinal column too. So that's a situation right there. But again, God knows how many older people, are walking around who've been misdiagnosed as having Alzheimer's, because there's no real test right now for Alzheimer's. The only way they can tell for sure is through an autopsy when they look at your brain. They can only suspect it right now. They are coming out with new tests, but they haven't been standardized as of now. But in other words, I believe there's a lot of people, older people, who are not eating properly, or they have this, let's say, it's called aclohydria is the medical term. They're not producing enough stomach acid. They are walking around with these memory problems. Looks like dementia. It's not. It's sad, because if these people were given a B12 supplement or B12 injection, they'd be cured instantly. It's really tragic when you think about it.